You know, when we think of ancient wonders, we immediately picture the Great Pyramid, right? And we usually just assume the person who built it must have been the original genius behind the whole concept. But the actual truth is so much more fascinating. Khufu was the pharaoh who didn't actually invent the pyramid. Instead, he did something arguably a lot harder. He masterfully scaled it into the greatest monument humanity had ever seen. He literally took a working idea and stretched it to the absolute limits of human ambition.
To really understand the sheer stakes of Khufu's achievement, I want you to imagine orchestrating a project that requires stacking over 2 million massive stone blocks into eternity. One king, one unified vision, and 2.3 million pieces of this colossal puzzle. What you should take away from this huge number isn't just the physical weight of all that stone, but the immense, crushing weight of leadership and organization that's required to even attempt something like this.
So let's look at where this crazy ambition actually came from. Khufu was born into a revolution, and he inherited a working architectural system. Pyramids definitely weren't an overnight success. Khufu was born into power, for sure, but he was also born into a legacy of serious trial and error. His father, Sneferu, endured decades of collapsing experiments, completely failed angles, and endless design adjustments. From the early mastaba tombs, to the step pyramid, to the near disaster of the bent pyramid, and then finally the successful red pyramid, Sneferu basically made all the painful mistakes and refined the engineering so the next generation wouldn't have to. Khufu didn't have to guess if a pyramid would stand up, he just had to figure out how to make it way, way bigger. And this perfectly illustrates the dynamic between the two rulers. While Sneferu was the pioneering inventor who perfected the formula through sheer persistence, Khufu was the ultimate visionary scaler. In the modern world of business and technology, we see this all the time, right? One person creates the prototype, but it takes an entirely different kind of mindset to take that prototype and build an absolute empire around it. And that is exactly what Khufu did.
Now, scaling a monument to this magnitude required a lot more than just good blueprints. It demanded absolute power and the complete centralization of an entire kingdom. We almost always focus on the architecture, but Khufu's true masterpiece might actually have been his economy. Khufu controlled the economy so tightly that he turned pyramid building into the ancient world's most complex logistical operation. By the time he took the throne, Egypt was incredibly centralized. Food storage was impeccably organized. Labor could be mobilized at the snap of a finger. For the very first time in human history, a single ruler controlled enough wealth and manpower to try and pull off the impossible.
With taxes flowing in from every corner of Egypt, Khufu systematically pulled in resources from hundreds of kilometers away to feed this functioning machine. Just imagine the Nile River as an ancient superhighway. Heavy granite is floating down from Aswan. Brilliant white limestone is being hauled from Terra. A massive, perfectly coordinated workforce is arriving exactly when needed. This wasn't just architecture anymore, this was literally the heartbeat of an entire nation synced to one single construction site. So, what actually happens when you combine that unprecedented level of centralized logistics with a proven, battle-tested architectural blueprint? Well, you get an awe-inspiring 2.3 million stone blocks. And remember, we aren't talking about little bricks you can just hold in one hand. Some of these individual stones weighed multiple tons. Teams of laborers were constantly pulling sledges, ramps were completely crowded with workers, and the air was thick with the sounds of chisels and coordinated effort. It was hands down the greatest construction project on Earth. You get a geometric mountain encased in shining white limestone that originally pierced the sky at a towering 146 meters. Try to visualize it not as the weathered, stepped stone we see today, but in its original form, a perfectly smooth, blindingly bright beacon reflecting the desert sun. It was a massive statement of power that could be seen from miles away. And incredibly, this structural masterpiece remained the tallest man-made building on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Just pause and let that time frame sink in for a second. 4 millennia. Empires rose and fell. Entire civilizations completely disappeared. Modern history as we know it took shape. And throughout almost all of it, Khufu's monument looked down on everything else human beings had ever built. It's a staggering testament to what they achieved over 4,500 years ago. Confronted with these jaw-dropping numbers achieved so deep in antiquity, we absolutely have to ask a very important question. How did they actually build it? It is so tempting when faced with something this monumental to just credit lost super technology or even aliens, right? We look at the sheer scale and our modern brains really struggle to comprehend how humans with copper tools and ropes could actually pull this off. But the real answer is actually a profound testament to human ingenuity. Spoiler alert, no aliens, no lost tech. The true secret was shockingly simple physics. For example, modern experiments have shown that just by wetting the sand in front of their wooden sledges, the ancient Egyptians dramatically reduced friction while dragging those massive stones. It sounds almost too basic, doesn't it? Literally just pouring water on sand, but that is the beauty of it.
So, the crucial point is what happens when you scale up that simple physics, when you combine that wet sand with a flawlessly organized workforce, master engineers, incredibly precise surveyors who align the structures almost perfectly with true north, highly skilled stoneworkers, boat crews, and seasonal labor rotating during the Nile floods. Simple ideas become totally world-changing. The magic wasn't in their tools, the magic was in their unparalleled organization.
Now, executing a project of this magnitude definitely came with immense pressure and a deeply complicated legacy. You simply cannot mobilize an entire country to build a literal mountain without leaving a mark on the people. For centuries, Greek writers painted Khufu as this cruel, relentless tyrant who whipped slaves into building his tomb. It's the classic Hollywood version of history we all know. But we have to look at what the actual Earth tells us. Modern archaeological evidence shows a much more complex reality. His workforce was largely comprised of respected, state-supported professionals. They were fed well, housed by the state, and operated in highly organized teams. They weren't Hollywood slaves. They were citizens making enormous, back-breaking sacrifices to build a piece of eternity for their nation and their god-king.
And this brings us to the crucial takeaway of this explainer. It's a recurring theme in human civilization. The first person discovers the formula, but the next person builds an empire with it. Sneferu proved the pyramid could work. He fought through all the failures and established the baseline. But Khufu proved how incredibly far human organization and sheer willpower could actually scale it.
Think about the landscape of history. Today, almost everything Khufu ruled has disappeared. His expansive palaces are gone. His unimaginable treasures, lost. His entire empire has vanished into dust. But his monument dominates the horizon today, 4,500 years later, because he understood one really profound truth. Scale creates immortality. He didn't just build a tomb, he built an absolute anchor in time.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling mystery. If Khufu built the ultimate unbeatable pyramid to perfectly secure his legacy, what fascinating logistical puzzle did his successor, Khafre, leave behind in the Egyptian sands? I mean, how do you even follow up the greatest building on Earth? We'll explore that monumental challenge next time. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.